Riddle me this, riddle me that. What happens when a company lays off hundreds of people within their most productive plant in the country? And then on the same hand, they tell you that they're gonna move production out of the country to another plant because of overflow protection. It really does not make really any sense, because what if I told you that there is a plant that is near the Stellantis assembly plant that Ram could use, but they're not doing so because they're a little salty about the UAW embarrassing them. It's that time of year again where you need to save as much money as you can to buy the gifts for everyone else and including yourself. So my friends at Just Bolt-Ons and Drag Racing Wheels have you covered. In case you need anything like exhaust systems, sticky Mickeys, catch cans, tonneau covers, whatever, my friends at Just Bolt-Ons and Drag Racing Wheels have some of the best prices online. And with my promo code BUTTER that you use at checkout, you can save up to an additional 15% off on your next order. So check out my friends at Just Bolt-Ons, DragRacingWheels.com, where some of the best prices online just got a little bit better. So I'm over 36,000 friends, and 61% of you guys now subscribe. Now this particular situation with Ram Trucks and Stellantis hits very home to me, because in this particular case, I have a lot of friends that work for the UAW that work within these few plants I'm gonna talk about, especially the Stellantis assembly plant, which is SHAP, and the Warren Truck plant, which has made the Ram Classic, the Wagoneer, and the Grand Wagoneer. And now that Stellantis has gotten rid of the Ram Classic, now that plant has laid off a lot of people, because that plant is really only making the Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer that is some of the worst selling SUVs in the country. They're too expensive and they're prone to a lot of issues, a lot of which is not really the fault of the workers themselves, but really the fault of Stellantis, who provides them with crappy parts that they put in those vehicles, and they have more issues with parts rather than the actual assembly of the vehicle. Now, I've made videos in the past, especially with the video that I made about the 2025 Ram trucks having brake issues, having connector issues. And in that video, the UAW did reveal that a lot of those issues followed the Grand Wagoneer and the Wagoneer from the Warren assembly plant all the way up into SHAP, because they think that a lot of these parts are shared, because honestly, at the end of the day, there's really not that much difference between the chassis on the Wagoneers and the new Ram 1500s. They're basically the same chassis. It is basically the Ram 1500s have a solid axle, while the Wagoneers have a independent rear suspension. But not going too deep into there is a lot of potential for Ram to have put production into the Warren assembly plant, because it is literally within 15-20 minutes of one another. It's really right down the street, really on the same exact road. So for Ram to say now, especially the new Ram CEO since Tim Knissis has left, Christine Fuel, who's the new CEO of Ram, she basically said that yes, they are going to move production to Mexico for overflow protection, which really does not make any sense at the end of the day. Because if you have a plant that's being underutilized within 20 minutes of your main plant, that makes more sense instead of overflow over there compared to hundreds of thousands of, well, not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of miles away in Mexico, and then ship the product right back into the country. But that is basically what Stellantis is going to do, not because it's more efficient, not because it's not exactly, I don't really think it'll be that much cheaper to make that product in Mexico or bring it to the US. But I think the main reason why they don't want to put production in Warren Truck is because they are pissed off with the UAW at the end of the day. Because it was just last year where the UAW's president, Shawn Fain, basically made a mockery of Stellantis, and ever since then, out of the other big three manufacturers, Ford and GM, Stellantis has been aggressively trying to piss off the UAW and has been very salty trying to move production away from those plants. Because ever since that Steno strike, literally every UAW-controlled plant within Stellantis has had either layoffs, plant closures, or whatever other nonsense going on. Like, there's even people complaining about lights not being fixed, bathroom issues. So a lot of stuff's been going on, and it seems to me, just my own personal opinion, was some opinion from some UAW workers that I know, because I got a lot of friends that work for these plants, that a lot of this stuff seems intentional, and this is just Stellantis' way of getting back at the UAW. And so that's why I'm very particularly interested in this topic, because like I said, a lot of my friends work at these plants. A lot of people who is giving me information about Ram trucks work in these plants. So I'm very, very, very concerned about what is going on here, especially when I first heard that the UAW was moving Ram production down to Mexico, because they already knew that they was moving another product down there, because it seems to me that production on the Mexican plant, Stellantis, whatever you want to call it, was already building a new section of that plant before it was even announced that they were gonna move production down to Mexico for overflow. Ram already knew that they was getting rid of the Ram Classic, because you don't just discontinue a model without first telling vendors that, hey, look, you know what, this particular model over here, we're not gonna make that model next year, so we're not gonna need like a very large order of these parts to fulfill this vehicle orders. So Ram knew in advance that they were going to get rid of the Ram Classic, and so they had to basically cut parts for that vehicle. So if they knew they was doing that, and really Warren Truck only makes really 3 models, excuse me, 3 models, the Ram Classic, the Wagoneer, and the Grand Wagoneer, they knew that they had enough space in that plant to move overflow from Shap to Warren Truck. But it seems to me that they're just trying to stick it to the UAW for the whole nonsense surrounding the stand-up strike. And that's how they're going to do it, by moving production away from UAW plants to other countries. Now, they've already, from other videos that I've told you guys about, they've already moved some production of the Grand Cherokee from the Mack assembly plant all the way to Egypt to get that out of the UAW's control. They're already shutting down Toledo and removing shifts from them. Well, partly because this thing with the Wrangler and the Gladiator is getting kind of ridiculous with the whole EPA nonsense, the 4xe models, but people just aren't that very interested in buying those models. So those plants are suffering, but they could have still put another model on that line, especially the new Jeep Recon, which is basically like an EV version of the Wrangler. They could have made room for that vehicle in Toledo, because no one's really gonna buy EVs from this company in mass. The Stellantis did not set themselves up to be an EV first manufacturer. They know for a fact people are not gonna buy EVs in massive numbers. Why would they not just overflow the plants? Well, not really overflow the plants, but stack multiple models within the plant in order to get the most out of each plant. So that's why I'm going like, why did they move the Jeep Recon to Brampton, where they used to make the Challenger and Charger, the Unifor? Oh, you know what? Because Unifor didn't piss off Stellantis. So now Unifor is getting rewarded with more product, because now Unifor is going to have, especially in Windsor, they're going to have the Challenger, well, not the Challenger, they're going to have the Charger Daytona, the regular Charger with the inline 6 engine in there. They're going to have the Pacifica. They're going to have the Chrysler Airflow, whatever. And then it's rumored that they're going to have a Durango replacement, all within one plant. But why are the plants in the US underutilized? Mack Truck and JNAP, which, like I said, I can't really remember the whole naming scheme behind Mack and JNAP. I just know there's 2 plants. And really, you're making an ancient Durango, and you're making the Grand Cherokee, the Grand Cherokee L, and the Grand Cherokee 4xe. Like, those vehicles are not getting the numbers out like they normally was. Then you have Sterling Assembly Plant that's making the Ram 1500, the Ram Rev, and they're gonna make the Ram Charger pretty soon. And that plant is nowhere near capacity. Last time I checked, I think the most numbers that Ram has put out in 1 year was like over 600,000 Ram 1500s. I'll put it down here in the bubble if I see the exact number. But for right now, they're already making around 400-some thousand trucks. So you literally gotta have like at least $100,000 discrepancy between the most truck that plant put out compared to how much or how many trucks that plant is putting out now. So why would you need overflow production already in Mexico if you're not even meeting even nowhere close to the amount of trucks that plant put out that one time? And so that's what I'm going like, it really doesn't make that much sense for them to move production to Mexico rather than move it to Warren Truck, because Warren Truck is right down the street. Let's say they actually do need overflow protection. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Ram is like behind schedule. and they need to actually get production out for Ram 1500 trucks. It makes more sense, especially have stamping operations already right there at Sterling Heights Assembly Plant. They can literally throw all the stamping on the back of a truck, drive it 20 minutes down the road, and send it right over the Warren truck and build overflow vehicles right there at that plant. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they need extra people. They literally have a crap load of temps that they laid off, that they go work right there at Warren truck plant. They go and actually call in the last minute to go make those vehicles. So to me, it just doesn't make really any sense for Ram to say that they're gonna move overflow production to Mexico unless they're going to intentionally try to remove jobs from the UAW's control. Because the only other way I see Sterling Heights Assembly Plant, SHAP, not being able to meet production quotas is because either Stellantis is not paying their vendors and they're having issues that way, or from some people within the plant telling me that they had batches of bad Hurricane engines that they've had to get fixed or replaced or whatever. But I know I've been told multiple times that there was a batch of Hurricane engines that were bad and they couldn't put into Ram trucks. So they had to basically scrap that production temporarily and build a bunch of Pentastar trucks. And then the only other way I see that production is not really going to happen at SHAP is because they're going to try to force that plant to run a bunch of Ram revs that's not very fast to produce. Because I've been told when they ran the pilot vehicles of those Ram revs, it took a long time for them to get those vehicles out. And it makes sense because it may require less parts to put these EVs together, but the parts they put in there are not exactly the fastest ways that you can put these vehicles together. Because even, for example, I know for a fact, because I went to Bowling Green to go to to take the tour of the Chevy Corvette, and even them down there in Bowling Green, they don't build all the variants of the Corvette back to back. They'll build a Stingray and then an E-Ray. They'll build a Stingray and then a convertible. They'll build a Stingray and then a Z06, because those other models are more complex to build, which takes longer, which slows the line down, which is probably why they're trying to get overflow protection for SHAP, because they're going to start cranking out Ram Rails and Ram Chargers, and they know those vehicles are going to take longer to get off the production line. And so they pretty much assume that those vehicles are going to take too long to produce, and it's going to hurt their numbers, and they're going to ship vehicles to Mexico, which it sounds in a vacuum, sounds like a very good idea, but we both know, well, we all thousands of us know, that it just makes more sense to ship those or shift some more people over to Warren Assembly Plant that's being underutilized, because that plant only really makes the worst selling, well, not, I don't want to say not exactly worst selling, but the Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer has been on the worst selling list since last year. Like literally every single month, it just jockeys between either first, fourth, eighth, ninth, whatever on the worst selling list. So it makes sense to move production to that plant, since that plant is really only like 20 minutes away from the other plant. So I'm just hoping with a change in administration, especially now, that the UAW goes and actually says something to the new president, Orange Man. Say, hey, you know what? Stellantis been playing games with us ever since our historic strike. And ever since then, they have been going out of their way to remove production away from American jobs. Could you know, maybe go and have a few choice words with them and tell them to move production back to the American workforce and help us out here? Because last time I checked, I don't really remember. I'm gonna let you guys remind me. When Orange Man was president the first time, did the UAW strike against Stellantis? Or really that particular time, did the UAW strike against FCA? When his current administration was in office, did it not strike against every single member of the big three? So back when Orange Man was in office, they struck against one person that I know of, GM. And the next thing I know, under this current administration, they struck against 3 people. And ever since they struck against 3 people under this current administration's watch, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people have gotten laid off ever since 2021. And then ever since the historic strike, now you have thousands upon thousands more UAW members getting laid off or removed or whatever, especially the temps and all that crap. So I'm just saying, I'm just gonna say maybe this UAW shouldn't stop putting their 2 cents into the elections and concentrate on keeping their own workers' jobs. I know some people don't like that particular fact, but the fact is the UAW striked against 1 member of the Big Three, and then in this particular election, they striked against 3 members of the Big Three. And now all of a sudden you get all this crap about corporate greed and eat to rich and all this other stuff going on. And the UAW members are paying for this big public campaign to shame the Big Three automakers. But like I said, I'm not gonna get too much into it, but we all see what the crap has happened over the past several months. But I'm just gonna say that I hope my friends over at these plants actually don't lose their jobs, because like I said, I know a lot of people who work at these plants. I know literally double-digit people who work at both those plants at various levels. I know people who work down the lower levels. I know people who work in the offices, wink, wink. So I'm just saying that I hope everything turns around, and I hope that UAW goes and talks to Orange Man about potentially putting tariffs on Stellantis, because they can really mess with Stellantis if they wanted to. Because last time I checked, majority of the products that Stellantis sells in America is not made in America. You only have but a handful of products that's actually made here. And if Stellantis tries to play games with the UAW, and they try to move majority of Ram production to Mexico because they want to shove their EVs down everyone's throats, and play this game where they're like, well, you know, we're only doing these overflow trucks in Mexico because we don't have production capacity, rather than the truth that they just want to stick it to the UAW and produce the truck a little bit cheaper for better profit margins. I hope that the UAW, like I said, go and have a conversation with Orange Man to get stuff taken care of. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think that the UAW is actually going to go talk to Orange Man to see whether or not he'll step in and do something against Stellantis? Or do you think that the UAW is going to be basically doomed because Stellantis is going to keep going nonstop and removing production from these plants, especially from Sterling Assembly Plant, Toledo, Warren Truck, and would it even ever open up Belvedere with all the stuff going on? So let me know what you guys think. And until the next time, I'm out.